This year we'll be discussing a number of crucial topics, which will provide for sure food for thought, that's for sure, and also we hope plenty of room for debate, passionate debate. For example, how is AI transforming our newsrooms? How can we understand new audiences? How can we keep them? How can we keep up the good job, the good journalism, audiences, and our strategies to keep them close, because we all know competing with platforms is a challenge, but also an opportunity if we play our cards right. And of course, journalism, the good kind, the real kind, the kind that never goes out of fashion and is needed, as I said, more than ever in these times of information overload or fake news. Of course, this conference is going to be much more than a program full of panel discussions. It's a thriving network of professionals with something really powerful in common. Something we could define with our motto, probably, is we connect. Because we're here to connect. We connect ideas, we connect generations, we connect places. We connect the journalism of today with the journalism of tomorrow, and above all, we connect with each other as professionals, as Europeans, as advocates for public service. So, speak your mind, ask questions. You can ask tough questions, laugh, discuss, and above all, as we say in Catalan, gaudiu, which is enjoy. Before we start, we'd like to thank CIRCOM for this ongoing promotion of this space. Thanks also to Trescat for welcoming this Congress in such a professional and warm manner. And without further ado, we began our program with the topic, artificial intelligence. Thanks to our sponsors for the generous support in making this event possible. So AI, from automatic content creation to audience personalization, AI is redefining the production, distribution, and consumption of information. But where do we draw the line? How can we ensure that technology empowers good journalism without compromising ethics and quality? Please welcome onto the stage David Caswell, our first speaker today in this session on AI in the newsroom, with his presentation, AI for Regional Media Overview, Opportunities and Outlook. David.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being the icebreaker. Okay. I know it's not easy to go first,
nope,
but stage is yours. Good. Thank you so much. Let me say that after your presentation, we'll have a few moments for you to ask questions to the speaker. So now the stage is yours. Go ahead, David. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you're awake. I know it was probably a late night last night for some of you, but my objective here today is to make sure that you're awake about AI. So hopefully some of this will help to do that. So I'm going to just start with an overview of AI, and I'm going to start it at the very, very basics of what AI is. And essentially, AI is a new kind of computation in the world. We have an old kind of computation, software or code or programming. It looks like this, little bits of rules and logic. And we have a new kind of computation, which are these neural networks, these AI deep learning neural networks that we're all talking about. If we want to do some automation, if we want to automate a task using code, we have to first understand the task. And then we write that down as code, that's what code is, and then the computer executes the code. That's not what happens with neural networks. With neural networks, we collect lots and lots of examples, training data, and then we use that to build these little connections between nodes in these networks. And then we run information through all these little connections to produce output. So we have an input and an output. And the key thing here is that these neural networks, these AI deep learning neural networks, they let us automate tasks that we have no understanding of how to do, which turns out to be most of the tasks that we do as humans. And the most important task that we don't understand how to do, that these neural networks let us do, is to produce language. And that's particularly interesting because language contains intelligence. I'm speaking to you now, everything you've ever read, everything you've ever heard is one word after another. It's this linear sequence of language that is a container of intelligence. And that's this new development that we've got here. This has been quite dramatic, to say the least, in the last few years. So here we are in 2019, GPT-2, the first publicly released large language model. And here's a prompt: what is better, a laptop or a desktop? And the response is not very useful. It kind of gets to the prompt, but there's an awful lot of copy and paste in there, a lot of repetition, a lot of very awkward things. It's very clear that it was not written by a person. And in fact, you can trace back where it was copy and pasted from, in this case, some Reddit posts, quite easily. It was very, very rudimentary. So this is 2019. By 2023, April 2023, when we have GPT-4, same prompt, what is better, laptop or a desktop? It provides this very, very readable, detailed, and systematic overview, which is essentially better than I could do, right? So this is April 2023, and if you would ask me to maybe take a day or two to answer that question, I could not do a better job than what GPT-4 can do in April 2023. In 2025, we have a new generation of models. This one is the OpenAI O3 model. It's a reasoning model. I've kind of set this up a little differently to answer at a much more advanced level than the previous models, but it's the same prompt. What's better, a laptop or a desktop? But now I'm looking for a PhD level, kind of doctoral dissertation type of response. And I won't go through the whole thing. It produced a big, long report for me, but I'll just kind of go through some of the table of contents. Basically, it looks at this question of laptops versus desktops from a human-computer interaction, or HCI perspective. It's a big field in kind of ergonomics, embodied ergonomics, cognitive load issues. Then it goes on to this analysis from a socio-technical perspective, upgrade paths, social practice, and so on. And then from a marketing point of view, marketing of desktops versus laptops, choice architectures, experience curves, this kind of stuff, and then gets into decision frameworks and all this stuff. This is PhD level work. Now, these are not perfect. They're, hallucinations, these errors that these things make, they're still in there somewhere. But there's clearly a dramatic step function in ability from model to model to model that we've kind of seen here. This is true right across different kinds of media. So this is Midjourney version 1 in July 2022. Query is a red-haired woman on a street in London. So this is a text-to-image model. That's the text. There's the image. Looks like a collage, like an art piece, copy and paste. By the time we get to February 2024, version 6, this is the response we get, right? Same thing in video. So this is text to video in terms of scene description. So you write a little description of a scene, and it plays the scene. The top one there is from June 2023, a model called Gen 2, Runway Gen 2. The bottom one is a Google text to video model from the end of 2024. It's the same prompt in both of them. You can see the improvement from the top one in 2023 to the bottom one in 2024. That's happened in about a year. But with a whole bunch of different prompts here that I kind of put together. Very, very dramatic improvement here. This is the latest Google text to video product. It's a full multimodal model that includes the sound as well as the video. So it's not just text to video, it's text to full video. In fact, the prompts in this model, this just was released on Tuesday. The prompts on this model are essentially direction. It's essentially written direction, full direction of video experiences. I'm going to play a little example here from Google just to show you what the output from this is. The input to this is just a text description of the direction of what the producer wanted.
They left behind a ball today. It bounced higher than I can jump. Oh,
What manner of magic is that?
So all of that, the scene, the dialogue, the music, the tracking shots, all of that was in direction and a prompt, and this is the result. Another form of text to video is synthetic avatars. This is from a London company called Synthesia. This is actually in their labs. It's not a product yet. It's an emotional direction model where the focus is on the emotion expressed by a synthetic avatar. So just to be clear, this avatar, these are created from real people who kind of go in and get photographed and videoed from all kinds of different angles. And then there's a model of this person and their behaviors, and then that is transferred into this model that lets you provide direction and a script, and this is the output. So I'll just play a little bit of this.
You know, there's a moment in everyone's life, a fleeting instant, where everything just clicks. It's not about money, fame, or whatever accolades the world can offer. It's about raw, unfiltered emotion. This, right here, right now, is mine. I've spent years chasing dreams, some of them mine, others...
So that's emotion as an output from a model. So this phenomena of improvement is not accidental. There are a set of what you might hear called scaling laws. These are not laws like natural laws of physics and so on. These are kind of approximations, but they show up in different ways. And some of these are starting to become less powerful at the moment. But essentially what they represent is as you increase the data and the computation that is used to create these models, the models get better and better and better in a very systematic and predictable way. Again, that started to break down a little bit in the last 6 months or so, but it's a general trend. And it doesn't just show in the technical measures of the capabilities of these models. It shows up in the tasks, the specific practical tasks that they do. So the bottom left there, you've got tasks like word unscrambling, Persian question and answering, so Persian, the language, 3-digit subtraction, and 2-digit multiplication. And the track follows the same line. On the right here, you've got this concept of prompt time or test time or inference time reasoning, where the model is reasoning after you put the prompt in. And all of these trends are essentially up and to the right. And if you kind of look at the scales there, they're not just up and to the right in a linear way, they're up and to the right in an exponential way, which suggests predictability towards further improvement. As a result of that, you're seeing vast investment flowing in to building these models, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, because of that predictability. These people think they can put all this money in and they know what they're going to get for it. It's showing up all over Silicon Valley, of course, but it's also becoming this kind of geostrategic thing where Emmanuel Macron is promising $109 billion for AI development, and you've got this big American Stargate thing that's being put together. It's becoming a sort of an arena for geostrategic competition. Adoption, right? So people using this stuff. So this was a study from the US Federal Reserve. They have this enormous study that they do periodically to measure all of the economic stuff from a consumer point of view in the US. They added some AI questions last year. So this is middle of 2024, published September 2024. And essentially at that point, about a quarter of working age Americans were using AI weekly at work. Somewhere between 0.5 and 3.5% of all work time in working age Americans in the US was on generative AI. There's been other studies since then, different studies. The Pew Center has put together an analysis of these studies. Something seems to have happened between February this year and now, where the adoption has really, really accelerated. And there's some studies now that suggest that use at work is around 40%, which is almost impossible to comprehend as far as I could see. About somewhere between 25 and 40% of working age Americans are using this at work. And that includes a lot of people who are not doing knowledge work, right? Same thing on the output side of this, on text as a medium of communication. This was a study done at Stanford, published in February this year, and they looked at 4 different corpuses of text, so 4 different kinds of text output. And they did some assessment as to what portion of those were AI generated. And for example, 24% of corporate press releases are AI generated. And the numbers are in double digits in the other corpuses as well. So AI-produced text is already a significant portion of the text environment that we're all in. Benchmarks, right? So there are a set of benchmarks to try to measure how good these things are in terms of different kind of levels of education or different kinds of professions and so on. And they all follow that kind of up into the right trajectory. So this is an example of PhD level science questions as a benchmark called CPQA. And you can see these models, the one that I showed earlier, the O3 model is kind of at the very top right there. There's been a problem actually with benchmarks in that we're saturating or maximizing all the benchmarks, because when you get to 100%, the benchmark's no longer useful. That's called saturation of the benchmark. And so we've got this kind of new set of benchmarks that are basically trying to get past the saturation of all of these typical benchmarks that we've been using for a while. And it just kind of illustrates the degree of difficulty in even measuring how capable these machines are. New capabilities, products launching all the time. I'm just going to cover one set of announcements here. This happened on Tuesday. This was Google's I/O event. And they, just in that one event, right, this is like a couple of hours on a stage in California somewhere, they announced agent mode, so these little intelligent agents that can turn goals into tasks and then do the tasks. They announced and launched the VO3, the text-to-video model that I just showed that did the animation. There's like coding assistance. There's a filmmaking tool. I haven't had a look at that, but that sounds interesting. This Project Astra is a little app for your phone that can see and hear and that speaks and listens and does all the stuff, so you can kind of hold up your phone and ask it about pictures and things in the world, about things that you're looking at. Very impressive. There's a bunch of image tools. There's a new thinking or reasoning mode. There's an audio thing. Gemini 2 is the big model. There's new capabilities there. So this, any one of these is an astounding product, and they have this whole kind of series of them. And this is just Google. Google is obviously not the only kind of player in this. So these things are just launching and launching and launching and launching. The rate at which they're launching is so much that even people whose job it is to keep track of this are having trouble keeping track of it. Experts. So, we listen to experts, about climate change, about vaccines, all the rest of it. We should listen to them about AI as well. So Sam Altman, who's got a vested interest here, he's the OpenAI CEO. He doesn't think he's going to be smarter than GPT-4. Dario Amodei, who's the CEO of Anthropic, another big model company, he likens what's coming to a whole country, say a country of maybe 8 million people, like Catalan, everyone in Einstein, all in a data center, say in San Antonio, Texas or something, right? That's kind of what he's got in his mind for how this stuff plays out. You'll see this again and again and again, expert after expert after expert, talk about these AGI or even beyond AGI. This is artificial general intelligence. These very, very advanced levels of intelligence as being something that is 2, 3, 4 years away. Even the critics on this, so people like Jan LeCun at Meta, or there's a paper there on the right, AI is normal technology, which analyzes this from a little bit of a skeptical point of view. Even the skeptics, the thing that they're skeptical about is only that this is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. They think it's going to happen in the next 5 or 6 years, right? So even the skeptics kind of accept that this is happening generally. And then the biggest argument for taking this stuff seriously is just using the tools, right? So I would strongly, strongly recommend that all of you sign up for these tools, sit down, engage with them seriously on tasks that you are very familiar with at a very high level, and just get some personal, visceral sense for what they can do. And not just the models, but the agents like the OpenAI deep research tool, Google has an equivalent, Anthropic has an equivalent, or these operational agents that can kind of take charge of your computer and do things for you. The Anthropic operator is one, computer use, there's others. if you just use the things yourself, you can get a personal, very, very deeply felt idea of what these things are about. I highly recommend that you do that. Okay, so let's turn to news. So how have news organizations adopted these tools? So I interact with news organizations all the time. ChatGPT launches in late 2022. The first 6 months or so, everybody's kind of putting together guidelines and doing some training and setting up access for their employees. You get into 2023, people are kind of building maybe summaries, they're doing tasks like copy editing or SEO optimization or social media creation. You get into 2024, some of the more advanced companies are building chatbots that talk to their archive. A lot of them are building toolkits where they gather all of these different tasks, these automated tasks that they've built, and put them into these toolkits. And then here in 2025, what I'm observing is that the leading edge of companies are building tools to help automate news gathering or certain areas of news gathering. Press releases, Reuters, for example, have a tool that reads about 4,000 or 5,000 press releases every day and then finds stories for journalists in those press releases. You see the same thing in multiple different news organizations. So this is kind of roughly what's happened with news organizations. So it's not nothing. It's quite impressive in many, many ways. But you got to compare this with the sort of rate of change of what's happening with the capabilities. So let's look at threats and opportunities. And I'm going to try to just provide a little more on the opportunity side than the threat side. So just to speak specifically about TV, I think it's worth separating AI disruption from just digital disruption generally, right? So digital disruption, which you're all familiar with, is this sort of migration of audiences to digital, to on-demand experiences away from linear. This is well underway, it's well understood. Yes, I know that a lot of news organizations are still, in the transition here, but this is something that's been kind of pretty clear for quite a while now. The AI disruption is different. It's not about disruption of the distribution, like the move from linear television to digital was. It's about the disruption of the full production of media. This is just beginning, obviously, and we don't understand at all kind of where this is going. But I just want to kind of point out that these are kind of different things. Lots of tactical opportunities, small opportunities that are available right now, right? Transcription, you can do captioning, there's like translation stuff, you can do fact-checking support, copy editing, you can do drafts of scripts, or you can adjust scripts. You got a 3-minute script and you need a 1-minute script from it, you can do that. You can do the summaries, you can do graphic designs, animations, and chatbots, and help with news gathering and investigations, and do video editing and so on. Lots and lots of things that you can do right now. And right now, like in the near term, not that many threats, right? I mean, a little bit of search traffic has gone away. There's more competition for attention, perhaps. But at the moment, most of the change is actually on the opportunity side in the near term. This is kind of where we are. There was an article in the Washington Post recently that referred to this phenomena kind of across the economy as kind of like the phony war of AI, which refers to this period in the Second World War where the war started, but nothing happened for 6 months. And we may be kind of in some kind of a similar phase with AI across the economy. But right now, it's mostly opportunities. I'll give you an example of one of these opportunities. This is from the BBC. This is a system that produces 96,000 weather reports every day in this highly customized, accessible fashion. I'll just play a little bit of this.
Here's the BBC weather forecast for W1A. In the afternoon, it will be rather cloudy with longer spells of showery rain look to drift in from the southwest. These locally heavy, some with... So
that has the sound effect and the regional accent and all that. And they do that every 3 hours for about 17,000 or so, or 12,000, whatever it was, different locations. So they do 96,000 of these things a day. It's kind of been operating for a few years now. Here's an example of some products from a company. This one's from a company called Channel One, but there's others around. This is a tool that you put your video in, and you get a whole bunch of different reformatings out. So video in, and then you get your summary version. You get your kind of your mobile version. You get all these different versions from it. Here's another tool that they produce, which is you put a bunch of like B-roll and sort of interviews and all that in, and then you get these sort of first draft productions from it. You're seeing more and more of these tools show up. Threats, right? So here's a here's a fundamental thing that's happening as a threat, which is this separation of the meaning of content from the communication of content. You know, before AI, you have a thing like an article or a video or a podcast or an episode, and it has all of these things in it. It's got facts and plots and concepts and styles and logic and tone and editorial voice. And what AI is doing is it's separating all of these things, these meaning things, from the artifact that contains it, and enabling them to be recombined into other artifacts, right? And this is a fundamental threat because our copyright regime is focused on the artifact. It's focused on the article. It's not focused on the facts and the style and the editorial voice and so on. And so the thing that really matters is actually not under the protection of copyright in this regime. Our copyright system is not fit for purpose in this new regime. That's a threat because it means you're not getting paid for the value in what you're producing. Here's another threat. It's a speed threat. It's a scale and scope and speed threat. You know, you've got all of these sources of information and stories and so on, and you've got this ability to take all of these with AI and bring them down into a newsroom and you know, create some stories, create some articles, create some scripts, create some videos, and then use all of these tools to create new different versions, you know, the summaries and the different videos and audio experiences and all this. And that's great, but the problem is that the AI news gathering that more and more companies are building is very, very fast. It's a Ferrari. These creation of all of these new experiences, these new videos and audio and text products, that's very, very fast. That's like Ferrari. But we still have this process in the middle that's typically based around scripts and articles and whatnot that is very, very slow. And so there's a threat from the inability of these legacy processes to match the speed and scale and scope of AI. Here's another threat. It's not just AI, right? So, you know, these numbers are just kind of representative here, but you know, you've got this sort of creeping threat to legacy media from new creators, from TikTok, from YouTube, from all the rest of it. And now you've got this new competition so that you end up with this situation where legacy media is kind of pinched from two sides. On the one side, you've got the sort of the authenticity and the creativity of all of these creators, and on the other side, you've got these machines doing the formulaic stuff, and both sides are sort of encroaching on legacy journalism. And so this is, I think, a major threat as well. What does a strategy look like to respond to all this, right? If we're in the present here, we've got this uncertain future, this AI-mediated information ecosystem. Well, you can, you know, engage with the tools, you know, learn what they are, get familiar with what the leading edge is, learn, just keep learning, do some experiments, optimize, you know, take those early wins, use those early opportunities. For the long term, it's good to be flexible. It's a very uncertain time. Audience relationships are always going to be the center of all of this, so making sure that you have those sort of deep connections with audiences, first principles, differentiation, this is all important. But that's actually not very helpful. You know, if you're looking to combine both of these, yeah, I mean, it's kind of common sense at some level, but how do you actually get specifically started on this? Because those early things, you know, engagement and experimentation, they're kind of obvious, and those long-term things are kind of vague. They're kind of wish list-like. What we're kind of looking for is more specific strategies for how to build towards this uncertain ecosystem, right? So opportunities. So here's an opportunity: move up the value chain, right? So just gather and communicate high-quality information, or specifically information that is difficult or impossible to produce with AI. Produce experiences that are difficult to impossible to produce with AI. There's a lot of those, right? Vox pops, or you know, there's all kinds of things that you can do that have this sort of value for audiences and yet are difficult for AI to do. And again, you know, fundamentals and differentiatable fundamentals are going to be important here. But also use AI and the AI ecosystem to adapt that information to consumers. So maybe you've got some kind of difficult to produce kind of video content. You can use AI to kind of adapt that to different formats and different devices. But the net of it here is that, you know, commodity news and very commonly accessible information probably not going to be that useful in the longer term. Here's another opportunity, access as a service, basically providing systematic, complete access to lots and lots and lots of different domains. This is essentially removing the newsworthiness decision. You basically act more like an intelligence service than a traditional newsroom. And then journalists become the facilitators and the verifiers, the overseers of these systems. And this is inevitably a more technical interpretation of journalism, but it very much is an opportunity. There are lots of publications that are starting in the last couple of years that do this. This is just a very small business-to-business example, supplier relationship management, fully put together using AI under the oversight of journalists, and provides complete coverage of this very, very niche business-to-business topic. There's lots of other examples too. Here's another opportunity, listening as a service. So essentially reversing the role of journalists in the information ecosystem from speakers to listeners. And so the role here of a journalist is to develop an understanding, a deep, visceral, authentic, real understanding of audiences, and to represent those audiences in this AI-mediated information ecosystem. And so the use of AI to provide content becomes a secondary role, right? You use AI, of course, to provide all of these things to your audience, but that's not the main role. The main role is this deep, respectful, authentic, real understanding of what your audiences need from that ecosystem. And that, I think, is a very real opportunity. And then lastly, this idea of journalism and news as data, as grounding data for the AI ecosystem. And so this is journalists as assemblers of information or maintainers of information. They basically kind of provide this editorial framework for how journalism or how news content works in an information in an information ecosystem mediated by AI. So that's like reference and verification and provenance and tracking and all this kind of stuff. It's an alternative to AI, but it can operate at the scale and the scope and the speed of AI. And this sounds like a little far out there, a little technical, but it's actually it's actually the main business model for AI that most large news organizations are currently doing, which are these deals that you see OpenAI and Perplexity and others do with publishers, and there's a lot of kind of smaller players like Human Native and Tollbit and ProRata that are trying to be kind of middlemen here. And these deals between model vendors and publishers, they're essentially the publishers providing journalism as data to the OpenAIs and the Perplexities and the Microsofts and the Googles of the world. So this is already happening as a business model. So when you're thinking about threats and opportunities, here's a way to think about it. So question, what would you do if the government, say, shows up tomorrow and says, right, we're going to give you 20,000 new journalists just for your newsroom, just for your personal newsroom. No cost to you, some program's going to pay for it. But here they are, 20,000 new journalists. What would you ask them to do? What would you do if you were given 20,000 additional writers and graphic designers and audio producers and video producers? No cost, they're in a building across the street. What would you ask them to do if you had that capability? And then here's the difficult question. What would you do if you were given these additional journalists, these additional designers and producers, but everyone else was given them as well, right? This is essentially the situation you're in. So let's just finish by looking a little further out at where this is going. One thing that I would highly recommend is that you don't just assume that AI can do something or can't do something, that you make the effort to check for yourself. This is a slide from the One IFRA Congress in Krakow a few weeks ago. AI cannot read between the lines. And it took me about 30 minutes to just demonstrate that, yes, of course AI can read between the lines. AI can determine the nuance and the subtext of very, very subtle statements and paragraphs and texts very, very easily. AI is very, very good at reading between the lines and getting to that subtext and nuance. And so, you can check these things. You just need to get this little bit of familiarity with these models, use them yourself, get comfortable with how to interact with them, and then you can just see if they can do them or not. One other way to look at this is that efficiency, just kind of automating what is already being done in your newsrooms, probably not going to be enough. It's good for now. It's a good place to start. It's a necessary place to start. But sooner or later, we're going to be in a new information ecosystem, a whole new way that information flows through society. And of course, there'll be this transition phase in the middle. And so efficiency, yes, efficiency and sort of operationalizing these things in your current workflows, it's the obvious place to start. Very good thing to do. But it's probably not going to be enough. We don't know what the timelines are going to be here. Maybe it's a few years, maybe it's a little bit longer. I increasingly think it's going to be a little longer. But we're going to have to fundamentally restructure the information ecosystem here. And then finally, looking out a little bit further, this artificial general intelligence thing, for most of my career, the idea of a machine that was smart enough to appear human, this was the Turing test, this was sort of the pinnacle of AI. We passed that in 2019, so that's just not an issue anymore. There's this idea of artificial good enough intelligence, AGI, but the G is good enough. And this is the idea that AI is as smart as the median human, or what some people call the smartest available human. That's kind of gone, right? I mean, most of these tools can write better than most people. They can draw better than most people. They can do things better than most people. At the median. I think we're within a few years of AI that's true AI general intelligence, which I'm going to define here as AI that's as smart as the smartest human, right? I showed that example of the laptop versus desktop text thing. I honestly could not analyze that question to the degree that machine did. There are errors and there are some problems. We're not quite there yet, but there's a dashed line. We're maybe a couple of years away from that. And then there's this other possibility at some point, which is AI that's smarter than all of us, all 8 billion of us on the planet collectively. We're smarter collectively, much smarter than we are individually, and at some point we get there. We already see this in things like DeepMind's AlphaFold, which solved the protein folding challenge. So we're seeing this in little niche problems in a few places, but that's not ridiculous for that to happen. So I'm going to just leave you with a set of scenarios and a QR code here. This was a project that I did last year called the AI in Journalism Futures Project, and it was a 15-year horizon for how AI might affect journalism deeply. And just very quickly, the scenarios were fully automated journalistic processes. We called it machines in the middle. It was this idea that knowing your audience was going to become extremely valuable in this environment. It was this idea that we were going to have different relationships with information in society, so this bifurcation of society into super empowered people and disempowered people. This idea that some AI would be restricted and that would not just be regulation, that a lot of it would be consumers deliberately restricting or managing how much AI they let into their lives. And then finally, this idea that AI just kind of takes on its own agency and starts to create an information ecosystem that we don't fully understand. But there's a very detailed report in that if you want to look at that QR code. Finally, I just love this quote here from Jelani Cobb, who's the dean of the Columbia School of Journalism. AI is an unignorable force, which journalism has to organize itself around. AI is not going to organize itself around journalism. And I think this quote kind of captures the situation that we're in. So I'm going to leave it there. What AI-based initiatives, and there's a little time code here that is blocking my view. Maybe I can see here. What AI-based initiatives have been most helpful in improving hyperlocal journalism? Personally, I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of opportunities, especially for hyperlocal journalism. You're seeing some very good examples in the Nordics, for example. Some of the work that has been done by TV2 and NRK. Some of the work that's been done with Swedish radio and their personalization of kind of regional bulletins in kind of the 40-something regions that they serve in Sweden. But I think there's an opportunity with AI to kind of solve some of the local journalism challenges, which is to combine human reporting, and maybe not just journalistic human reporting, but human reporting from members of communities, and to use AI to make that articulate and verified and professional, and combine that with sources from maybe data, from structured data, from unstructured data, from social media posts, from companies, from all the rest of it, and to do that systematically so that you've got this local combination of human-sourced reporting and machine-sourced reporting, and bring those together. I haven't seen that sort of tried at scale yet, but there's little signs of it in various places. Who owns the copyright for AI-generated video content? Well, it depends on the jurisdiction. In the US, I believe they've said that there is no copyright. You can't copyright this stuff, which is quite interesting. You have to add something of your own to it. But I think the whole issue around copyright and AI is ripe for upheaval and overhaul. So I'm not going to say much more about that. I don't speak, but let me see if I can translate this. Can somebody translate this for me? Is that?
How do you talk about how you prepare the future without taking into account the quantic computation?
I didn't quite get that. Okay.
Is someone in the audience know what quantic computation? I don't know. Okay, we'll answer to that through the app.
Okay. Are we running out of corpuses to train these models? Smaller models, more popular, cheaper to run. So there's two questions there on the data side of this. Yes, we've been using huge, the internet basically to train these things, and we've kind of run out of internet. But there's other kinds of data that are coming along. So one is this idea of synthetic data, which is not just made up data. It actually is a real thing. It's about using kind of simple data to make more complicated data, which in turn can make the model smarter. And then there's another thing that's happening, which is we're moving, especially this year, more into an environment where a lot of these tools are acting as agents, which means that they're given goals, broad goals, and they sort of figure out how to do a task, or a set of tasks from those goals, then they do the tasks, then they report that back. And the thing with those agents is they let the models learn not from data, but from the experience of operating. And so they start to learn like a person learns from the experience of doing things in the world. And that's an infinite amount of data. So yes, I think there are issues here with running out of data, but there's many, many different ways that we'll get past that. So it's not going to stop, I think, the trajectory of these models. The smaller models, I think, are very, very powerful. They run on your phone. They can for specific tasks, this kind of distilled models, they can be almost as performant as large models. How quickly are AI results polluted by AI quoting itself? This is the whole snake eating its tail thing. Yes, this is a thing, but these model companies and the sort of people that work in the scientists that kind of build these things, well aware of this. It's a well understood challenge. It's not seen as a sort of a kind of a blocker to continued progress. Part of the reason for that is that the AI results that end up in the training data are not just sort of random AI results. They're typically AI results chosen by a human. So even the AI results, they have a human editorial component to them, which makes them useful as training data. Made the point that it's more important for us to know our audience. Yes. But isn't AI also great at understanding a large audience if given the right data? Yeah, AI can do things like, you're seeing publishers and other companies now building kind of AI representations of their audience. So maybe they've got 30 audience segments. They'll kind of set up little personas for each of those audience segments, including data and descriptions and all the rest of it. And then they'll use those personas as like a continuous focus group. So they can focus group everything, right? They can have some random question in a meeting, and they can just focus group it right there, right then, with these personas. And it's called a digital twin approach. That's become quite popular. Hollywood fears AI. How worried should journalism be? Will AI efficiently mean fewer jobs for journalists? So I'll just talk about the journalists. So I honestly think there's going to be more journalists' jobs 10 years from now than there is now. And you see that in different professions, more bank tellers after ATMs than before ATMs. It's a phenomena. The thing is, though, they're going to be completely different jobs, right? They're going to be about facilitating information in society, just like journalism is now, but the way that they'll do it, the skills, the tasks, the expectations, the assumptions, the cultures will be different. So I don't think journalists, if they're motivated by facilitating information in society, I don't think journalists are going away, but I think journalists who sort of just stick with that legacy process and culture and way of doing things, that's probably not going to last through this transition. Journalism has to fundamentally shift, as you suggest, with the opportunities. Do you thinly think we need a whole new range of thinking, a new thinking journalism? Well, I think we need to fundamentally re-examine essentially the entire practice of journalism, right? This doesn't have to happen tomorrow. I think there's, it's not a panic situation. But I think this is kind of it, right? I mean, it's basically a question about, if you were to fast forward 10 years and think, well, who is going to be managing the flows of information through society, making sure they're verified, making sure they're complete, making sure that people can trust them, making sure that there's an archive so we can track what people said, making sure that there's reputation, all of these things, corrections, all of these things. Who's going to be doing that? I think that will be done. That's a basic fundamental societal need. But the question is, are legacy organizations going to transform themselves and take on that role in the AI environment? Or are other organizations, startups and whatnot, new entrants going to do that? And I think that's what we're kind of really talking about at the moment. I think, personally, I think it's particularly important for legacy organizations to engage with the tools and lead the transformation and essentially transfer the values that they have now into that new world where everything else is different, but the values remain the same. I think that is the best case scenario, which is why letting go of the legacy assumptions and embracing what's happening is so important. Let's see, minority languages. There's some great examples of minority languages. Just in general, as these things develop, they're getting better and better at minority languages. But what you're seeing is governments in small language countries do their own training, fine-tuning and so on models in the language. And that's been very, very successful. It's happened in Denmark. It's happened in other places. What's better for text-based work in newsrooms, Claude, ChatGPT, or O3? Well, you can access O3 through ChatGPT. So honestly, I think that Claude and ChatGPT are kind of the big ones that I use, but they're different personalities. The interesting thing with these models, or an interesting thing with these models, is actually how similar they are. They have different personalities. They have sort of different guardrails. Like Grok will talk about a lot of things that, say, Gemini won't talk about. There are little quirks there. But by and large, at the leading edge, it's surprising how similar they are. So my advice there would be just to use them and see which one you prefer. In terms of sort of technical precision, I think O3 is the leading edge. Although O3, it's the first model from the whole series that OpenAI has released where the hallucination rate is higher than the previous model. So there's some caveats there as well. How can AI-powered automated workflows be implemented in traditional newsrooms? Well, I think there's two ways. One way, the quick way, the easy way, the way to learn is just to look at how your workflow operates now and to use these tools in different parts of the workflow. So you used to do transcription by hand, automate the transcription. You used to do the draft by hand, automate the draft, whatever the thing is. That's the first way. But there's a second way, which is to just start with a white piece of paper and think, if I was going to build this workflow now, if I was going to deliver this value to my audience now, with no history at all, but with these tools, how would I do it? And so that's about fundamentally restructuring what your workflow is and how it delivers. And not just in terms of the same outputs that your manual workflow is producing, but completely new outputs, maybe 100 times the quantity, or 100 times the depth, or spectacular interactivity, or some kind of hyper-personalization, whatever it is, but new kinds of value that you couldn't do manually, but you can do with these tools. How will regional media move from the current efficiency phase to the transition in AI-mediated phase, considering the lack of AI codes, culture, and training? Honestly, I think like training, like these models are not difficult to use, like all of them, right? You don't need any technical background at all. There are like infinite tutorials and videos and YouTube sessions and all the rest of it that teach you how to use these things. You can sit down in front of them and ask them to teach you how to use them, or you can just play with them until you get familiarity with them. I don't think things like training and like budgets and all this, I don't think they're a problem. I think the problem or the requirement is curiosity and imagination and a willingness to engage. So I think these things are open to absolutely everybody, but the barrier is imagination, curiosity, engagement, just doing it. I don't think it's the kind of thing that you read about and then you know how to do it. It's the kind of thing that you just do and then you pick it up. You know, that's how it works.
Thank you, David.